Black Americans who were enslaved for their intellect as opposed to just their physical labor is something that is rarely discussed. And as a result, I created this series to highlight Black Americans who were enslaved for their intellect. And today, we're going to highlight Elizabeth Keckley. Elizabeth Keckley was born in the month of February 1818. Unfortunately, she doesn't know the exact date that she was born on. She was born in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. And at the age of 4 years old, she was made nanny of her enslaver's infant child. As a result, she endured brutal punishments for the slightest mistakes concerning that child, as well as the worst human abuses that an enslaved girl can experience from her enslavers. She had some real mean enslavers. As time would move on, the enslavers took her and moved to St. Louis, Missouri. And there she began to start sewing clothes for the family as well as taking care of the children. The thing about it is that Elizabeth Keckley seemed to have a skill for sewing. She sewed so good, neighbors started asking her to sew clothes for them. And so her enslavers made that a part of their income, and she started generating enough income to support a household of 17. Over the years, Elizabeth Keckley's reputation grew as a fashion designer, and she started designing clothes and making dresses for the elite, the high society of St. Louis. And as years went by, Elizabeth asked her enslavers if she could purchase her, and at this point in time she had a son, her son's freedom. And her enslavers, being the mean people that they were, they told her no. So year after year after year, she asked her enslavers if she could purchase her own freedom. They told her no. Eventually they told her yes, but for a very high price of $1,200. That sounds like a low price now, but back then, when adjusted to today's dollar, that is over $40,000. That was almost impossible for her to save up and get. However, Elizabeth Keckley had established friendships with a lot of the women of high society who she designed and made dresses for. So they got together and loaned her the money to buy her freedom. And she did just that. Now that she was free, she was able to keep all of the money that she earned sewing dresses. So she stayed in St. Louis until she paid back her loan for $1,200. And she immediately went down to Washington, D.C. She arrived in Washington, D.C. in 1860 to pursue better opportunities. She opened up a shop. She started sewing clothes, and immediately her reputation grew, and it grew really fast, to the point where she had to hire 20 seamstresses to allow her to be able to fill all the orders at the rate they were coming in. And within 1 year, Elizabeth Keckley became the personal modiste, the personal dressmaker and confidant to the First Lady, Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's wife. This is how good she was as a fashion designer. Eventually, the Civil War breaks out, and Elizabeth Keckley becomes a philanthropist. She founded the Contraband Relief Association. And this association, she was helping Black soldiers, and she was helping newly freed Black people to get on their feet. Fortunately, the North won, and all the slaves was freed. And a few years after the Civil War was over, Elizabeth Keckley decided to write an autobiography. The name of the autobiography, which is available today, is called Behind the Scenes, or 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. And in telling her story in her autobiography, needless to say, it included her experience with the first family, President Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd Lincoln. Unfortunately, this didn't fly over well with high society in Washington, D.C. A lot of the ladies felt that that was some type of a betrayal to include that information in the book. The book became a scandal, if you will. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Keckley lost a lot of her high-paying clientele over this book. And her business took a serious hit over this book, and she ultimately ended up becoming a teacher teaching domestic science and sewing at Wilberforce University in Ohio. Yeah, interesting story. So that her work is not in vain, so that her sacrifice is not in vain, read her autobiography, Behind the Scenes, or 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. Oh, and one fun fact, Sarah Jessica Parker, who played Carrie Bradshaw in the series Sex and the City, she gave Elizabeth Keckley a lot of props and wore a dress that was inspired by one of Elizabeth Keckley dresses to the Met Gala. And here's a picture of it. New Being 1619, we innovate or we dissipate. Peace.
New Being 1619 is a niche social media platform built for Black culture and for Black needs, so that we can live our best lives. New Being 1619, we innovate or we dissipate.